start this game preview, right? I'm not going to talk too much about injuries, right? Because, like I said, it's still early in the week for me to really know who's going to play, who's not going to play, things like that. But I did see that guys like Roquan Smith was DNP on Thursday, um, Arthur Marlette, and Travis Jones, right? Now, Arthur Marlette's not surprising. That's why the Ravens go out and sign a guy like Desmond King for some depth. I don't think Desmond King's going to play a whole bunch of snaps or anything like that, but the Ravens needed more bodies in the secondary, so they went out and got him, right? Okay, cool. Also, the Travis Jones has been dealing with that ankle injury constantly, right? It is what it is. Hopefully, we can have him back for this game, but we'll see about that. In terms of Roquan Smith, excuse me, right? Hamstring injury. That's kind of a tough injury to bounce back from in 1 week. Honestly, I would be surprised if Roquan Smith ends up playing in this game, right, on Monday night. I'll be kind of shocked by that, right? Hamstring injuries, I mean, usually a couple weeks, right? If he turns around and it was just the slightest bit of a pull, I mean, he goes out there, he can injure himself again, and then he's out for the rest of the season, right? So, gotta be careful with hamstring injuries, right? Very, very sensitive subject, right? All right, now, Chargers last 3 games, right? Chargers are rolling right now, 3-0 on the last 3 games. They're now 7-3 on the season. They beat the Browns 27-10. They beat the Titans 27-17. And then on Sunday Night Football last week, they beat the Bengals 34-27 in a game where they were up big. The Bengals came back, but the Chargers held on, right? I think it was J.K. Dobbins down the left sideline for a game-winning touchdown, right? Ravens fans, we've seen that before in the past, right? Especially against the Bengals. I think he did that first as a rookie. So, yeah, the Chargers are rolling right now a little bit, and let's get into it, right? So let's talk about their defense, okay? So the Chargers defense is one of the better units in the NFL this year, right? Jesse Minter coming from college, following Jim Harbaugh, is having a lot of success right now. So we're talking about 14 and a half points allowed. That's first in the NFL. Um, only allowing 32% on third down. That's second in the NFL. 3.4 sacks a game for fourth in the NFL, right? They got some good numbers here. Their overall yardage numbers are kind of middle of the pack, right? So they give some yards, not a lot of points, right? Um, but so we're talking about 110 yards a game on the ground for 11, 206 yards through the air for 12th, right? So there will be some opportunities for the Ravens to move the ball down the field, right? The Chargers want to keep everything in front of them, and then they're going to make the Ravens hopefully play or try to play mistake-free football, right? If you can do that, you can get down the field. If not, maybe it would cause some turnovers or just frustrate to the point where they get you to a third down, and now you can't convert that third down, right? So the Ravens are definitely going to be in a dogfight in this game, right? The Chargers, like I said, 7-3. They're kind of ascending right now, and the Raiders got to watch out for that, right? So when I look at Jesse Minter, it kind of reminds me of the same thing with Mike McDonald, right? You get a year with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan to be a defensive coordinator. You come to the NFL. Now, granted, he's under the same head coach now, but kind of reminds me of the same thing, that same energy, right? So the Chargers do a lot of good things with defense. They're going to play a lot of zone coverage, right? But they're just, they're physical, right? They're a good team, right? They've kind of been using Derwin James in that how Hamilton was used last year, right? Kind of closer to the line of scrimmage, a lot of snaps in the nickel, and that's how they're going to play it, right? When you think of Derwin James, he's one of the most versatile safeties in the NFL, but he's had his issues with injuries, right? So that's kind of been his drawback. All right. Now for the Chargers offense, right? We're talking about kind of a middle of the pack unit that has gotten better over the last couple of weeks. But total yards a game for 19th, 326 yards a game. Third down percentage is kind of average. 2.6 sacks allowed a game for 20th, so that's kind of on the low end. They're not throwing the ball a lot, typical with a Greg Roman offense, but they are kind of middle of the pack in yards. Justin Herbert is playing better as the season has gone along, right? We can say that for sure, right? Um, Rushing attempts, 10th in the NFL. Rushing yards, 12th. So they're kind of right in line with what you do with a Greg Roman offense. Also, even down to having a 300-pound fullback that also played D-line, right? Scott Matlock is a guy that has played. I think I've read a stat that he's the only player in the NFL to play 50 plus snaps of offense and 50 plus snaps of defense. If we remember young Pat Ricard, that's what Pat Ricard did. Pat Ricard was on the defensive line for the Ravens and playing offense a little bit, right? They're doing the same thing with Matlock. Maybe he'll transition to a full-time fullback if they keep, Greg Roman how Pat Ricard was, right? So Chargers are going to want to run the ball. They're going to be in heavy personnel, right? And they're going to have some of these receivers step up, right? Lamar McConkey has been good. Quentin Johnston, right, had a pretty bad rookie year, right? You can talk about drops, not running precise routes. He's looked better this year, right? He's catching touchdown passes. His hands look to be a lot better, right? One of the biggest issues to me for him was that he was a body catcher, right? Body catchers can be very, very inconsistent, right? Ravens have some issues down their team right now. A guy like Zay Flowers can be a body catcher. We saw one bounce off his face mat or bounce off his chest in the Steelers game because he tried to catch it with his body instead of his hands, right? So body catchers can be inconsistent, but that's something that where if you work on it long enough, get your hands right, you become a good player. So Quentin Johnston is a vertical threat underneath and over top. Ravens will have to watch out for. So that's kind of going to be what we're looking out for in the game, right? Justin Herbert has been kind of on a tear lately, right? So I know for start of the season, not Browns, I almost said Browns fans. Chargers fans weren't happy with the great woman offense, right? They weren't scoring enough points in the red zone. They were inconsistent, that they didn't like the pass game, right? It sounds very, very familiar, right? Because they were having kind of the same exact issues that we were complaining about as Ravens fans, right? So the great Roman experience is going up and down for them, all right? They'll probably be good this year, and then when it comes to a couple years, it kind of tapers off, kind of peters off, right? That's just how it goes typically with great Roman, right? But for the Chargers, it's okay. All right. So now listen, let's talk about keys to the game, okay? Keys to the game for the offense, right? I want to see consistency with the run game. All right. The Chargers use a lot of light boxes. So we're talking about six bodies or less in the box, right? And what do the Rays want to do? The Rays want to pound the football, right? So I want to see some consistency with Derrick Henry on the ground to get started, right? The Ravens' best offense, right, is under center, play action off of that. When you're in probably 20, with two tight ends on the field and two wide receivers, right? That's probably the Ravens' best kind of personnel package as a whole, right? I want to see them lean more into that, right? You can do a lot of things off of that. Play action, straight drop back. You can get your rollouts going with Lamar. It's a lot of things you can do from that. Listen, the Ravens have kind of been, to me, sometimes too shotgun heavy. So if we can get under center, get Derrick Henry rolling, that can get you in some second and shorts, third and shorts. Now we can do whatever we want. If you want to be in shotgun, you can. If you want to be under center, you can, right? It opens up the entire playbook, so kind of forcing your hand into one thing. Okay. Chargers a lot of two deep safeties, right? So that's why I'm also saying consistency with the run game, right? Chargers want to keep everything in front of them, right? So they're going to let you get these yards, right? If they're going to allow you to have these yards, the Ravens have to be patient enough to take those yards, right? So two deep safeties, it makes it a lot easier to run the ball on. There's another guy outside the box, right? The Ravens usually face a lot of teams that play a lot of cover three, right? So if the Chargers stick to their game plan and stay in that kind of cover four, cover two shell, it's going to be a little bit of a change up for what the Ravens are typically facing. But who knows? The Chargers, maybe they change their game plan because they're playing the Ravens and they're playing this run game. Maybe they change their game plan. We shall see. But they stay with what they usually been doing. Ravens have to be able to take those yards in front of them and live with that. They got to be able to do that. Okay. Zone defense, right? You mentioned they're playing cover four, two high shell, stuff like that. The Ravens, that's what they do best, right? They beat zone coverage, right? So Zay, Bate, Likely, Andrews are guys that work well in the zone, when to sit, when to run. That's a good thing for the Ravens, right? So, when the Ravens play, a lot of teams that play, straight up man-to-man and blitz, they've had a little bit more trouble, right? Because the Ravens like to do these long development kind of routes, right? I wish when the Ravens play teams that play a lot more man coverage that they would do more quick hitters and things like that, but that's just not typically how the offense has been run, right? But when you play a team that's going to play zone, right, try to keep it in front of you, Lamar Jackson has been great against that, right? Particularly in the intermediate area, right? So that's what I want to talk about as well. The short to intermediate area, Lamar Jackson has been the best quarterback in the NFL by EPA, by drop back, stuff like that, right? So take advantage of that, right? So 10 to 19, check downs, all those kind of things. Take advantage of that because that's what they're going to give you, right? The Ravens aren't really a big over the top offense. I mean, outside of really the shot down the field in the Tampa Bay game versus the Bucks, right, to Bateman. Ravens aren't really a big throw the ball, 30, 40 yards down the field. That's not really what they do, right? So this game versus the Chargers, I think, fits into what the Ravens offense wants to be. All right. For the defense, right? So Justin Herbert, guy disrupt his rhythm, right? Justin Herbert hasn't thrown an interception in 8 games. I believe that's the stat I read, right? So that kind of falls in line with what you watch, right? He looks good. He's in a rhythm. He's playing well. I mean, he's probably one of the most naturally gifted just throwers of the football you're going to see in the NFL, right? The ball jumps out of his hand. He can fit the ball into any type of tight spot. So the Ravens have to be able to disrupt his rhythm, right? I need to see pass rush consistency, all right? The last 2 games for the Ravens, the pass rush has shown up in a big way, okay? The Bengals game, Matt Big gets 3 sacks, plus a bunch of pressures from the entire defensive line. Last game versus the Steelers, even though it was a loss, defense played better as a whole. And always ends up with like 2.5 sacks, right? Some of those sacks might have been taken away from him. I had to check the official numbers, but at the end of the game, he was credited with 2.5 sacks, right? And also, it was a bunch of pressures from the entire line as a whole, right? So that's what we need to see. Can this pass rush stay consistent, right? Because the first month of the season, especially when Kyle Van Noy was rolling and Adolphe Owe at the same time, it was looking good. They went through a lull a little bit, right? Then these last couple of games, they've shot back up. They need to stay fired up and keep going, right? The Ravens are not going to be the team they want to be without an effective pass rush. It's just not going to happen. All right. So that's it right there. So for X factors, right? X factors for the game, right? So bounce back game, right? The Ravens lost a very, very disappointing game to the Steelers, but the AFC North is crazy, right? I just literally watched the Steelers lose to the Browns, like the Ravens lost to the Browns, right? I believe the Browns have 3 wins on the season, and 2 of them is in the division, right? So, when we talk about beating the Steelers and beating the Ravens, okay? Jameis Winston making snow angels, all kinds of crazy stuff happening in the AFC North, right? When it comes down to the football games, all right? So, can you bounce back, right? I think the Ravens do typically bounce back from disappointing games, right? Particularly in the regular season. They've been good with that. So I don't have a real concern about that. I think the Ravens will be just fine in that capacity, right? They will bounce back. They will have a good game. And they will be ready to play on Monday night, right? When the Ravens play up against good teams in these primetime kind of matchups, they show up, right? And I don't expect anything less. Right? I expect the Ravens to show up and win this game. That's what I expect, okay? And then the second X factor for me is the Ravens secondary, right? Is it fixed, right? We've seen the Ravens make a couple of changes, right? Darius Washington is now full-time starting safety next to Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton is playing a little bit more deeper. Then he'll switch up and play closer to the line of scrimmage. So it's kind of more of a dual role for Kyle Hamilton than what it was in the last couple of years, right? What else? Brandon Stevens got his snaps cut into a little bit by Trey White. I think that number only goes up, right? Especially if Brandon Stevens is going to continue to do plays where he doesn't get his head around, right? Trey White, I saw him go up against, I watched the film again. Trey White going up against George Pickens multiple times. He gets his head around, right? It's intelligence, things like that, right? If I see a receiver running 15, 20 yards down the field, running in a straight line, hey, let me get my head around because he's probably just running a go route. Let me see if I can locate the football, right? It was little things like that you don't see, right? I saw the same go route with George Pickens on Brandon Stevens. George Pickens is running 20 yards, 25 yards down the field. Brandon Stevens is just staring him in his eyes. That's not good enough, right? Locate the football. Let's use some IQ here. If a guy's running straight for this long, he's probably just running the go route. Let me turn around. Let me get eyes on the football, right? We saw that from Trey White game 1. Okay, so is it fixed, right? Is Darius Washington enough back there to stop the big plays? Kyle Hamilton at deep safety is that enough to stop the big plays? Marlon Humphrey's having, I believe, the highest graded season of a corner right now. He's 3rd in the league in interceptions. Nate Wiggins is having a really, really solid and good rookie season. So is this Ravens secondary truly fixed? We shall see, right? So to me, those are the X factors, right? Bounce back game and this Ravens secondary. What will we see? So for the Ravens on Monday night, I think they do go out there and win this game. But obviously, give me your thoughts in the comments. Reply to all comments. It's Gabriel, Fan TV. I'm out.